We've all been there. You're stuck in a conversation listening to someone waffle on about the emotional outpourings of some problem they're going through at the moment. Parking ticket, relationship problems, work problems, whilst you secretly try to signal you couldn't care less while still acting interested at the same time because you don't want to be a complete douchebag. All the while you're thinking in your head, why doesn't this person just shut up? So in order to get them to stop talking, you offer them some useless advice and keep your fingers crossed that this person never speaks to you again. But hold on, I'm not letting you off the hook that quickly, because you and I both know you've been this annoying person venting to other people one too many times. Me very much included in this equation. So before we cover why venting never works, let's quickly outline why we vent in the first place. You vent because you feel stressed. And when you feel stressed, your body doesn't just have to rely on a fight or flight response, because there is a third stress response, otherwise known as tend and befriend. Evolutionarily speaking, it is more helpful for two minds to focus on solving a problem rather than just one mind. Think the problem being saber-toothed tiger for your ancestors. So it makes sense that you want to reach out to other people when you feel stressed. In fact, when you do reach out to people in order to vent, you're trying to meet one of two psychological needs. I did try to draw a saber-toothed tiger, but yeah. The two needs you try to meet through venting are your cognitive needs, that's a brain, by the way. You want to understand the problem, see it from another perspective, decide what action to take to solve it, and calm your emotions down. And then you've got your emotional needs. That's a person with a gut feelings and all that. You want to feel understood by the person you're venting to through empathy and validation, and you want to feel soothed so your emotions can calm down. But here's the problem. When you vent, you're biased towards meeting your emotional needs rather than your cognitive needs. In other words, you don't want to hear practical solutions, you just want to be understood. For example, let's say you're venting to your friend about how angry you feel because you failed your driving test 2 days ago. Essentially, you want to hear, oh man, that must suck, or I understand how you must be feeling right now, rather than, well, just try again, or use it as an opportunity of what to do or what not to do next time. The bottom line here is, when you're venting to someone who's only showing empathy towards your emotions and validating how you feel, you're getting yourself stuck in the negative loop of the same emotions that you want to avoid, because the person who, albeit through good intentions, is just expressing empathy is naturally going to ask you the journalistic questions of who, what, when, where and why about the situation. Again, making you feel those negative emotions more that sparked you to vent in the first place, meaning that your brain is now feeling like that event is happening right now, so your stress response increases and no solution is found. This process, psychologically, is known as co-rumination. The negative cycle of co-rumination is you vent, and then the empathic listener asks you the who, what, when, where, why did this happen, all of that. You then, because of that, relive the negative experience, meaning more logs are thrown onto your proverbial emotional fire, sparking your stress response even more, because your brain's like, oh my god, this thing's happening right now, because it can't tell the difference between reality and imagination, meaning you then feel worse, causing you to feel the need to vent even more. The reason why co-rumination keeps you in a negative spiralling loop is because thoughts don't exist alone. Each thought that you have triggers more thoughts associated with the last thought you've just had. Lol, thanks brain. To demonstrate this, I've got a quick exercise for us to do. It's only 20 seconds, it's going to be a bit sus, and it does involve you taking your closing your eyes. Don't worry, it'll be quick, and I won't. Close your eyes, and for the next 20 seconds, I want you to think of a cat and see where your mind goes with that thought. Just think of a cat for the next 20 seconds. Okay, that's enough of that. Now your mind might have gone anywhere, but perhaps what you noticed is you didn't just think about a cat. You thought about the feeling of fur on your skin, or you heard purring, or you imagined a cat chasing something, or you thought about cats from your past. If you didn't, don't worry. But what this highlights about thoughts is they are domino-like in nature. One negative thought leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another, until you're sat in your bath on a Tuesday morning with no water running, crying whilst thinking about your ex. I failed my driving test. Why can't I do anything right? My ex was right. I'm a failure. I hate my life. I've always hated my life. Damn, she was so gorgeous. Bit specific, who fucking wrote this script? Anyway, by venting and just having your emotions validated by someone who's only being empathic, like we mentioned, you're just keeping yourself in that negative loop of feeling the same emotions you want to escape from, not to mention you're now triggering more thoughts and emotions you would ideally like to escape from. Now, before we move on, if you're scientific by nature, there are 2 studies which support why venting doesn't work. Northern Illinois and Virginia Tech students who shared their thoughts online and their feelings online with other people after a school shooting didn't see long-term benefits. And interestingly enough, people who shared their thoughts and feelings after 9/11 suffered more physical and long-term ills. Feel free to check out those studies in the description if you want to deep dive in your own time. But now we've covered why venting doesn't work and why co-rumination is about as useful as a pair of sunglasses on a bloke with one ear. Let's now cover how to vent better so that you're not a burden to other people, and how to receive someone correctly when they're venting to you. Not sure where that example came from. Firstly, I've got some bad news for you. You can't just ignore people's emotions in favour of being practical all of the time, because us humans are emotional by nature, and if you always respond to people venting to you with well-intentioned quick advice so they can shut up, you'll soon have no friends, which is a no bueno. So what you want to do in order to avoid the pitfalls of getting stuck in co-rumination is combine the extremes of just being empathic and only validating people's emotions with just being practical and cold and rational all of the time, so that you can become empathically practical. So with that character in mind, the next time someone is venting to you, here's how you can best help them. Empathically understand the person venting to you as best as you can. You do this by validating how they feel and demonstrating that you understand how they feel and the situation that they're in. However, common knowledge is going to teach you to say things like, I understand how you feel. Never tell someone that you understand how they feel, because one, you can never fully understand how someone feels or the situation they're in because you're not them, and two, even if you do understand how they feel, they're likely not going to believe you if you tell them it, which is going to make them more defensive. So don't tell someone that you understand how they feel, demonstrate it. Number one, you can do this with reflective listening. So reflect in your own words what this person has just said back to them. Number two, posture towards this person if you're speaking to them face to face. Make sure your shoulders are in line with their shoulders. You're not doing anything else. You're not fiddling. You're not on your phone or anything. You are dialed in, presently focused on paying attention to this person. And then three, simply allow them space and time in the conversation to talk. Then, after you've demonstrated that you understand this person, this is when you don't just stop at empathy. You shift their perspective indirectly with something known as calibrated questions. We're going to explain this in about a minute or so, but the main analogy I want you to equip yourself with here for all of your interactions going forward when someone vents to you is you are walking a tightrope between extreme empathy on the one hand, which is you overly validating this person's emotions, and then you both getting caught in that negative loop of co-rumination, and then pure extreme focus on logical, rational, and practical thinking on the other hand, where you're just giving advice to this person which comes across as a put down and as if you're signalling disinterest to this other person. But before we finalise this video by covering how to deliver calibrated questions, to shift this other person's perspective, I just want to quickly zoom out and paint the bigger picture for you here. This two-step process and this framework that you see down here originated in the 1970s when the New York hostage negotiations team realised that when hostage takers, very hostile criminals, realised that they weren't in danger, their stress response decreased and they were much more open to cooperation, which is what you want if someone has robbed a bank and they've got a load of civilians hostage and you're the policeman trying to negotiate with this very unsavoury character. This framework down here was developed by a clinical psychologist and a policeman, and it is called the Behaviour Stairway. What was it? Hold on one second. Behaviour Change Stairway Model. So there's a few more steps, but it involves active listening, empathy, rapport, influence, and behaviour change. That might have seemed like an extreme example, hostage negotiation, but it's not that much different when someone comes to you and their stress response is high and they start venting to you. You have to first empathically understand, of course, and then shift their perspective. You can't do it in reverse order. So now we've covered that, and as mentioned, let's now finalise the video by covering how to deliver calibrated questions to indirectly shift this person's perspective. This is going to sound evil, but the goal of practically helping someone who is venting to you after you've first validated their emotions is to give them the illusion of control, while you steadily shift their perspective. All the while, they are completely unaware of the direction you're taking them towards throughout the conversation. And the best way to do this is by asking them a calibrated question, otherwise known as a how or what question. It sounds simple, but stay with me. Asking someone a how or what question is a great way to de-escalate conflict in the other person and to get them to see your perspective without coming across as pushy. You see, calibrated questions, they don't ask for a single fact. They make the other person stop and think. They prevent something known as unbelief, which is resistance in the other person towards accepting your point of view. And they prevent you from having to do something known as verbal flexing, which is where you dig your heels in and you really try to convince the other person of your point of view with force. As the hostage negotiator Chris Voss says, you don't directly persuade them to see your ideas. Instead, you ride them to your ideas. As the saying goes, the best way to ride a horse is in the direction in which it is going. For example, imagine a friend is venting to you because they've had a tough week at work and now they've concluded they want to quit their job. However, deep down, you know that them quitting their job isn't going to serve them in the long term. You've got two options. You can deliver a flat, outright statement of your perspective. You can't leave because this is going to be terrible for you long term. Or ask them a calibrated question. What do you hope to achieve by leaving? Now your friend has been invited to stop and think, and you can explore the issue further with them, all the while you direct them towards seeing your perspective. The opposite of a calibrated question, as we all know too well, are close-ended questions. This is where you ask, do you think, or does this? Anytime you use do or does, you're going to get an either yes or a no, which isn't inviting the other person to speak more. The opposite is also resistant statements, like these, asking why, or why do you think this, or why? This is great to know if you're not an English speaker, by the way, which I know a lot of you guys aren't. The word why in any language comes across as an accusation. Something to note. And the final alternative to a calibrated question is just giving outright advice in a way where this person feels like you're making yourself out to be the know-it-all. Let's put some more examples of calibrated questions on the board. Some bad examples, like we just covered, are, why did you do it? Do you think it's a good idea? Again, you're going to get a yes or no. Or why don't you? Remember, why? Accusation. Calibrated questions. What caused you to do it? What about this is important to you? How can I help you make the best decision? What are you trying to accomplish here? What brought you? What brought us to this situation? Or you? How can you best solve this problem? Long. I'm going to rub these off, but don't worry if you want to capture these questions. The top pinned comment will be the video notes where you'll find all of this. Calibrated questions work because they are an indirect, non-pushy way of helping the person venting solve the issue by combining your practical, non-emotional perspective with their intelligence and awareness of themselves. Essentially, you're getting facts from the person whilst encouraging them to think logically and creatively. But one thing to note, calibrated questions are not mindless questions that you read from a list. They're intentional. First of all, you have to think about the direction you want to take this person, destination, and then you track back from there and you ask your questions in order to guide them to that destination. For example, let's imagine your good friend is in a toxic relationship and he's venting to you about how fed up he feels about still being in this situation. One option is you can deliver a resistance statement. This ends now. But you've told him this in the past and he still isn't listening. So, with your desired destination in mind of wanting to shift his perspective to see how leaving this relationship would be beneficial for him, of course, two-step process. First, empathize. Demonstrate you understand how he's feeling right now and validate his emotions by reflecting what he said back to him in your own words, posturing towards him and giving him space to think and speak his mind. You might even say something like, "Seems like this is a very difficult situation for you to be in right now." Then, desired destination in mind, craft your calibrated questions. What are you afraid might happen if you leave? How could this impact you if you stayed together? What's the future looking like? What are all the consequences at play here? How must she be feeling? Please see the corresponding meme on the screen now. Struggles, eh? In order for calibrated questions to be effective, you have to get rid of your bravado of wanting to be right and problem solve straight away by giving quick advice, and instead give the other person the illusion of control by directing them towards your desired destination, letting them think that they're doing all of the thinking. As Robert Estabrook once said, "He who has learned to disagree without being disagreeable has discovered the most valuable secret of negotiation." As we bring this video to a close, I just wanted to leave you with one more piece of advice. Oh, did I validate your emotions first? And some other ways you can indirectly help this person. Finally, 3 other ways you can indirectly help someone solve a problem is tell them how someone you know has solved a similar problem in the past. Then it doesn't come across as if you're the main party delivering the advice. You can facilitate someone's problem solving if they're close to you. For example, if you have a roommate, your partner, friend, colleague, what have you, if they're venting about, I just don't have enough time or space in order to study or work, wash up for them or do the laundry, take on one of their jobs and do it for them. It's a very simple way to help someone solve a problem. And finally, you could ask someone else for advice about a similar problem this person is having in front of this person. So the advice is directed towards you, but secretly you want this person to listen to the advice. Be careful with that. You don't want to be ingenuous with it. And finally, when it comes to your self-venting, everything we've covered so far, you can, if you want to, I do this, apply it to your own self. Interrogate yourself with your own calibrated questions after you first validate your emotions. But if you're venting to someone else, just pick the right person. Don't pick someone who's just going to be empathic. Don't pick someone who's going to dismiss you by giving you quick advice. Find that one person in your life. Maybe they're not present in your life right now. This is a future friend, who knows? Find that person who's going to first try to understand and then help you shift your perspective. There we go. If you want to dive deeper, into all of this stuff, I would recommend 2 books for the calibrated questions. Of course, Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference, but in a general sense, where I got a lot of this information from is from a brilliant book I'm reading right now called Chatter by Ethan Kross, I believe his name is, all about how to harness your brain when it is overthinking, going into overdrive. Anyway, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time and attention. Stay disciplined, playful, and dangerous. Adios, muchachos y muchachas.